Debuting on August 1, 2006, CM Punk's first TV appearance was hyped by the underground audience who was watching him in ROH, leading to some intrigue as to how that interest will translate to business in front of a wide audience, as Punk made his TV debut in a match against Justin Credible that was hyped throughout the show. The next day when numbers came out, reality hits, as Punk's debut not only didn't boost numbers, but resulted in the new ECW brand's first ever viewership drop, with Punk's match Quarter Hour losing over 110,000 viewers and was the lowest rated segment on the show. Heading into his first ever pay-per-view main event in December, Punk was backed by Heyman to win the Elimination Chamber match that also included Big Show and Lashley, who was already targeted for a big run heading into WrestleMania 23. Heyman's comical booking suggestion of the match ended up his final decision, as he was removed from his position right after, with the December to Dismember pay-per-view, Punk's first as part headliner, ended up the least bought pay-per-view in company history with around 90,000 buys. After starting the year with the Lashley vs. McMahon's program and sending Chris Benoit to boost the show's profile, plans changed with the Benoit tragedy and later chosen champion John Morrison getting suspended, resulting in Punk getting his first shot as champion after beating Morrison to win the belt on September 4, 2007. Within weeks, and despite the company attempts to send Raw and SmackDown names to boost interest, ECW dropped to an all-time low 1.1 to 1.2 rating and largely stayed in that range. Punk was champion for exactly 20 weeks between September 4 to January 22, averaging a 1.25 rating, a massive drop as the previous 20 weeks saw the show average 1.5. Punk was one of the biggest beneficiaries from the company's attempt to clean up the image of the 2007 steroid saga due to his straight-edge gimmick, as he continued to be pushed on the ECW brand, with the show collapsing to all-time lows by mid-2008. The attempt to refresh the brand saw Punk move to Raw, while Mark Henry and Matt Hardy became the most featured performers on ECW. Within weeks from Punk's removal, the show bounced back big, jumping to a 1.4 rating average in the next 10 weeks compared to Punk's less than 1.1, the highest rated stretch of the show since before Punk won the belt, while at the same time Raw saw its lowest rated unopposed SummerSlam lead in ratings, with Punk as world champion dropping to perhaps only the 5th match on the card. 2009 saw the company again trying to make it click by moving Punk to SmackDown for a feud with Jeff Hardy. Punk got the belt again on June 7 at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, holding it for 7 weeks between June 7 to July 26, and somehow was able to top himself as SmackDown viewership plummeted, with Punk's 7-week reign averaging a 1.7 rating, making him by far not only the lowest rated champion in SmackDown history, but the lowest ever for the company on a main show since the inception of cable TV. Jeff Hardy finally won the belt and led to a ratings increase on July 31 as SmackDown jumped to its highest rating in over 3 months for his first show, but by then the damage was done and he was on the verge of leaving, leading to the company calling Undertaker back early to stop the bleeding after Hardy left. As while Punk was sent back to the mid-card, Taker along with the returning Batista and Rey Mysterio saw SmackDown numbers back up into the over 2 rating range by the end of the year. While can't be blamed solely on Punk's match, as he was in perhaps only the 3rd most promoted match on the show after DX's return in Cena vs. Orton, Punk's record low rating run during the summer culminated in the SummerSlam 2009 pay-per-view, drawing its lowest number of the era since international buys were counted, with around 360,000 buys. With the majority of the main event roster now working on a part-time schedule, the company came up with another storyline to try to get over Punk, positioning him as a rebellious figure against management while giving him a worked shoot promo designed to generate some interest by name-dropping for shock value. While creating some buzz in the niche groups of the fan base, the mass audience showed no interest as the weeks following saw all viewership drop significantly. The Money in the Bank pay-per-view ended up increasing slightly from the year before, but the increase proved to be more of an unusual weakness of the 2010 event more than the strength of 2011, as the following two Money in the Bank pay-per-views in 2012 and 2013 both outdrew 2011 with 206 and 223,000 buys. Punk's big opportunity to finally make a drawing power stamp came at SummerSlam 2011 in a headline match with Cena, along with the added star power of Triple H as referee and the McMahons involved in the build-up. The result was the proven trend continued as SummerSlam dropped to its lowest number in history, a massive drop from the 2010 event while drawing an all-time low 180,000 domestic buys. Things didn't improve from there for the next few months, as besides viewership continuing to dwindle and despite working in a main Raw storyline with established names, Punk's string of pay-per-views that included a singles match with Triple H after months out in Night of Champions, Hell in a Cell and Vengeance, saw the shows drawing some of the lowest pay-per-views in company history between 120 to 160,000 buys, with the domestic figures reaching 60 to 100,000. Leading to Punk having multiple shows in the top 10 worst-selling pay-per-views in history. While pay-per-views were reaching new lows, the company was trying to fill time until the road to WrestleMania when the top names returned to TV, leading to results never seen before in an unopposed situation. Raw with Punk now as one of the most featured performers and no established names to carry the load, saw Punk's individual segments on the show routinely losing viewers, in a run that included a show on December 9th where the TV audience rejected the company's niche indie fanbase pandering and saw the main event of the show dropping to the lowest-rated main event in a generation, forcing the company to take actions as with star power called back on the show Punk was relegated back to mid-card programs. With the top headliners leaving again after WrestleMania, the company had to go back to the Punk and Bryan combination, this time placing it in the middle of the card. In May and June 2012 Punk and Bryan in a triangle program with AJB seemed to work their magic again, as their segments and matches routinely bombed as a major viewership turn-off whenever they were placed on the show. At that point in 2012 when Raw was still doing relatively healthy numbers at a stage where viewership was only starting to show worrying signs, Punk and Bryan's turn-off factor was unprecedented for promoted performers in Raw's history, with Kane then added to the mix to pick up the pieces. Due to the unique situation of being a world champion while not being close to a competent stand-alone draw, Punk's WWE title run in 2012 went down as perhaps the most irrelevant world championship reign in company history, as at no point prior the title meant less or was less featured than during this period, with Punk becoming the first title holder in history to go 8 pay-per-views in a row without main eventing a single show, as he was placed below and outdrawn by Lesnar, Cena, Hunter, Big Show, Kane and even general manager John Laurinaitis. With Rock and Vince McMahon setting the stage for his in-ring return in January 2013, Rock and Punk shot the first angle in July 2012. What the company perhaps underestimated was the damage caused in the following 6 months of Punk's run gifted to him by the circumstances, with the match being booked months in advance, as the company was locked and kept the belt on Punk despite dropping to the lowest Raw rating average in the modern era. After ratings dropping to all-time lows by the end of 2012, Rock returned to pick up the business, selling the program with a series of money promos while restoring the lost credibility of the belt in a week in his first title match since 2002, working his magic again as even with Punk as the opponent. Royal Rumble 2013 was the most watched Rumble pay-per-view in a decade with around 580,000 buys. The next night on Raw ratings jumped to an almost year high, with Punk never getting the title back again. The summer of 2013 saw Punk getting what ended up his final big chance to make a difference in a main SummerSlam match. The show, which despite the lack of believability was built on Cena vs. Bryan and Lesnar vs. Punk, positioning Punk and Bryan against established names on a high-profile event. As can be expected by now, the show bombed, showing a massive drop from last year's SummerSlam headlined by a Lesnar vs Triple H match, drawing the second lowest pay-per-view buys in SummerSlam history, second only to the Punk vs Cena 2011 show. Vince McMahon, on the company's conference call weeks later when asked about the low number, said that SummerSlam was a miss and didn't feature the right attraction. Things didn't get better from there on pay-per-view, as the next two shows built around Bryan and Punk getting the babyface comeback on heels. Orton and Heyman saw the audience disconnect continuing as Night of Champions on September 15 dropped from last year and ended up doing the lowest pay-per-view of the year so far with around 195,000 buys. A few weeks later, on October 6, Battleground did around 119,000 buys, making it one of the lowest ever pay-per-views in company history. With the realization of relegation back to his mid-card position after countless failed attempts by the company to make him a main event player, Punk walked out on the company while still under contract and was officially fired a few months later, ending his WWE run. Punk returned to wrestling television after over 5 years on WWE's new Backstage Fox show, advertised for his first interview on November 19, 2019. The show increased to 180,000 viewers, but even with the 5-year absence, it was a vintage performance from Punk, as viewers turned off the show as it went on, starting with 190 and dropping to 160,000 viewers by the end of it, with the audience turn-off leading to the show's cancellation months later. The August 20th Rampage show saw Punk making his AEW debut in Chicago, with the show being the first televised event from the United Center since WCW folded. Along with cheap ticket sales that papered the house, AEW was able to fill the building. Not advertised by name, the company hyped the surprise with a strong hint of Punk appearing and was able to get some of the regular Dynamite viewers to watch on Friday, drawing 1.1 million viewers. The boost lasted a week, as the next Friday saw the show not only showing a massive drop from the previous week, but drawing a lower audience than the first week, dropping from 740 to a shallow 722,000 viewers. Punk made his Dynamite debut on August 25, 2021 from Milwaukee. Despite the relatively small building, which holds around 7,000 to 9,000 people, the show drew around 5,000, failing to sell out for Punk's first advertised appearance in over 7 years. Even more shocking, at least to the people who didn't follow the pattern of his career, Punk's return promo segment wasn't even the second most watched part of the show, gaining a measly 40,000 viewers from the previous quarter while getting outdrawn by random throwaway matches on the night, showing not even a 1-week boost of interest to the company, and with history indicating an artificial niche attraction's shelf life to be the first week, it's most likely all downhill from there.